Pardon the brief interruption. I need to tell you about a special upcoming event that's part of the People Reign Lessons from Leaders series, featuring 3 incredible dynamic CXOs who will be discussing how leaders are reinventing work and themselves. It's called When Intelligence is Everywhere, Intelligence is Nowhere. I'll be moderating the discussion, and we're going to be going beyond the headlines. We're going to talk about a couple of key topics that are super timely and relevant, like HR wasn't built for AI, so what's next? Is the CIO still relevant when everyone's a technologist? And what's the real value of intelligence as a service? If you like this podcast, and I hope you do, you must join us. The event's September 17th at noon Eastern Time. Register via the link in the show notes. Everyone who attends will receive a custom AI Maturity Industry Benchmarks Report. It's normally $499. We'll give it to you for free just for attending. It's a virtual event. It will be live streamed. It's free to attend, but you must get pre-approval. There will be a wait list. And you know what else? If you DM me on LinkedIn when you register, I will send you some limited edition People Reign swag. Now back to today's amazing episode.
Worse, AI disrupting the workforce is something you could probably do something about in the next few years. But then now as AGI's advent becomes palpable, people start to think more about, well, okay, we can see AGI is going to be able to think as well as people pretty soon. It's looking tangible, but will it just be pretending to understand anything? Will it just be pretending to be conscious?
Yo, it's the future. Don't hit the snooze. AI is here giving humans the boost. Team Humans rolling, brains in the game with Dan Turchin. Y'all remember the name. People reign in the mix, no stopping the flow. Better work, better life. Yeah, we're ready to go. Robots and humans, a collab, you know. Okay, let's start the show.
Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. It's Dan Turchin, and I'm here with a very special guest live at AGI-26. We're on the campus of San Francisco State, and it is absolutely my pleasure to talk to the one, the only Dr. Ben Goertzel. He is the chair of the event. I believe this is the 19th annual.
That's right. Yeah. Crazy.
Unbelievable. You're an Iron Man. For those who don't know Dr. Ben Goertzel, and you should, he is arguably the figure who popularized the term AGI. There are a few. It's certainly a community. But when we think about the evolution of artificial general intelligence, AGI, the first name that comes to mind is Dr. Goertzel and his contributions to the field. Let's get started by opening up the time capsule. So I believe you and I share maybe a favorite book, one that influenced both of us, The Prometheus Project by Gerald.
That's right. That was a book I found in 1973 or something.
5 years after it was published.
It's published, published 68. I was born in 66. In 1965, which I wasn't aware of at the time, I.J. Good published his paper on the intelligence explosion, saying that the first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention humanity need to make. And Gerald Feinberg, who wrote the Prometheus Project, had the same concept, among other allied concepts. I later got to know a guy named Valentin Turchin, who was kind of the founder of AI in Russia. And he'd written a book called The Phenomenon of Science around the same...
He's a relative of mine, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you know Peter Turchin, too. Then. Yeah. So, I mean, Val, I knew fairly well in the late 90s. I helped him raise money for his company, Supercompilers, LLC, with Yuri Mostovoy, Andrei, and Arkady Klimov. And we're now in the middle of building a supercompiler for our Meta AGI language, right? Which
I thought there was that through line.
Val would be very psyched.
Super compilation is related.
Yeah. He'd be very psyched to see that. But anyway, yeah, Turchin and Feinberg, I.J. Good, and a bunch of others who didn't write about it were seeing clearly at that time what was going to be possible, because you already had neural nets learning things from experience. You already had symbolic reasoning systems doing logical derivations about common sense knowledge. And these elements were already there back then. These guys could also all see that hardware wasn't yet at the level it needed to be, but the nature of exponential growth was also clear then, and that's something else that Feinberg hammered home in his book, right? Where he knew we weren't there yet, but he could see we could get there within a few decades to AGI, although he didn't call it that yet, to nanomachines, to super longevity. And the other key point he made in that book was we could put this to a variety of ends. We could put it to the ends of, tremendous human consciousness expansion, or we could put it to the ends of rampant mindless consumerism. And he wasn't thinking about the Terminator. He was just thinking about like a endless shopping malls in the Brady Bunch forever or something, right? And he thought we should put it to a vote of everyone on the planet. To what end do we put these amazing technological advances? And with charming naivete, he figured the UN could roll out computerized voting equipment around the world to make this happen. Technology has advanced roughly along the lines he foresaw. I'm not sure the UN has grown into the role he saw it taking.
So 1973, Ben's a kid, and you discover the Prometheus project. What were you like as a kid? What inspired?
I was quite shy and introverted. I think if it had been the present time, I would have been diagnosed as on the spectrum and given some help. And in that era, you were just a geek and a freak, and they beat you up and left you alone, right? It was a very, very different era, right? And I mean, my parents were not poor. I mean, my dad was a university professor, but he was an assistant professor then. We didn't have. My mom was in social work, so like there was no money for private schools or tutors or fancy stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time with my nose in various books. My grandpa was a physical chemist. He gave me his quantum mechanics book collection when I was 7 or 8, and I started trying to understand it with very partial but not zero success, right? And so yeah, I was very introverted reading science fact and science fiction. At a chemistry set I was tinkering with, I'd ordered computer kits from like popular science magazines, started soldering things together. But I mean, then when I was 14, like the early general purpose computers came out. Like when I was 14, like VIC 20, Timex Sinclair, Atari 400 came out, and I asked my parents to buy me a computer. They're like, "What do you need a computer for?" My dad did show me Fortran programming on the mainframe at Rutgers University, which he was using to do linear regression from punch cards, right? But I delivered papers for like 6 months, Philadelphia Bulletin, door to door, to save up like $400 to buy an Atari 400. Then you had BASIC, you had Forth, which is a robotics language for stack manipulation, and you had assembly language, and you could do some actual programming on there, right? Which was certainly an eye opener. And I started trying to code AI and realized there's only so much you can do with 16K of RAM, right? But far less than a phone or
PRS-80 from Radio Shack.
Yeah, we had my friend Larry Tyke. A couple years after that, so I started college at 15. Larry started early also, and he ran a magazine for Trash 80 users, which it was basic code.
If you remember
basic code in the magazine, and he wrote all the code for the magazine like each month at age 16 or something, right?
So you got to get your PhD in math.
Yeah, I did undergrad and graduate degrees in math, and computer science was only beginning as a discipline then. So I mean, I was coding, but I didn't know if I wanted to do physics, math, computer science, theoretical biology. There were a lot of it. I actually, for a while, I thought doing a PhD in philosophy for studying philosophy of mind, but ended up, I wrote to the philosopher Paul Feyerabend, who was a brilliant guy, author of Against Method, an anarchist philosophy of science, and he strongly advised me not to get a degree in philosophy because I might want to earn a living at some point in my life. And he's like, study science, do philosophy on the side, which is pretty much what I have done. I mean, he passed away some time ago, unfortunately. But I mean, I loved math. Math was probably the easiest thing for me, because physics, you had all these lab experiments. Computer science, you had to write a lot of boring code that you already knew how to do. And math, things like creative writing or philosophy had issues that your marks depended on whether the professor agreed with your taste. Whereas math is easy for me. There's no annoying grunge work of labs or coding, and it's objective. The professor may not like the aesthetics of your proof, but if it's right, they will still give you a high mark. So I like that about it. I mean, you could debate which axiom system to assume, but that only comes up at the very, very high levels, right? So yeah, I enjoyed math. I never really thought I was going to be a theoretical mathematician for a career, although I love theoretical math. I was always even more interested in applying math to do stuff like build a thinking machine, or build a time machine, or build a systems biology model of the whole human body and figure out how to create immortals or something. But you could see, like, whatever amazing thing you want to do, the most effective approach probably involves building a mathematical model of that thing and then leveraging that in some practical way.
Well, Ben, as the dean of the AI and the Future of Work podcast, I'm going to go ahead and just grant you an honorary PhD in philosophy. So,
all right. Not sure if that's an honor or not, actually, but hey.
Along those lines, I'm going to ask you a question that's not rhetorical. I'd like to hear from Dr. Goertzel. What is a human?
I mean, that's an evolving and nebulous entity, right? I mean, of course, there's the biological definition, which is important and foundational, right? Like, we are bodies as well as mind, and we're a certain quite remarkable biological species, and that conditions all the other more abstract conceptions of what it is to be human. And then, beyond that, there's the cultural aspect, which then veers into psychological and spiritual aspects. I mean, our humanity it's a way of thinking, a way of feeling, a way of being individually and collectively, and that three cheers for humanity. Yeah. The cultural / psychological, / spiritual aspect has been evolving a great deal, and I would say the common elements are only evident in hindsight, right? Like, I mean, you had Stone Age society, you had early civilization, you have industrial society, now post-industrial society, soon to have post-singularity society, and there's been so much change that what we are today might not be recognized as human by people from the Middle Age or the Stone Age, when they see us walking around with our ear pods in and staring at our phones all day and falling in love with AI girlfriends and whatnot. So we see ourselves as human, and we see the thread of continuity with the past. But would folks in the past recognize us as one of them? Not entirely clear, right? I mean, look at the trouble that folks from, say, an isolated Amazonian tribe have when they're plunked into a modern city. I mean, they don't quite feel that they're among their peers, right? So I think the thread of humanity is there, but is a subtle thing, recognizable better in hindsight than in foresight. And you could draw an analogy there to the thread of evolution of the self of each of us. So, right, like 2-year-old Ben Goertzel, 5-year-old Ben Goertzel, 12-year-old Ben Goertzel, like day by day, there hasn't been a day when I woke up and perceived a huge discontinuous jump with what I was the previous day, right? I mean, I could be hungover in the morning. I was partying the last night, but it's still me, right? On the other hand, between the 2-year-old version of me and the 59 version of me, it's a very big jump, right? And would the 2-year-old me recognize the 59-year-old me as the same guy? I mean, not really, right? I mean, it wouldn't be able to conceptualize it, right? So maybe the 10-year-old me would. Partly, he'd be disgusted and alarmed by some of the directions I've gone, and amazed and thrilled at some of the directions I've gone, right? But same way with a culture or the collective mind of a species, right? Like day by day, humanity has evolved, but what we've evolved into bears little resemblance in many ways to what we were originally. And that's important to recognize when you think about our future evolution, right? Because some form of humanity will likely be around 50 or 100 years from now. It may look very different than what humanity is now. Many people today might be alarmed if they could see what humanity is going to be 100 years from now. But to that future evolution of humanity, looking back, they'll be like, yeah, we grew up in a certain direction, right?
But to the cave person or the Amazonian tribe person or 2-year-old Ben Goertzel, no one would argue that those are not humans.
We don't argue those are not humans, but the cave person might argue that we now are not humans.
Perhaps. So where I'm going is, and I'm using this term intentionally, all of those different versions of humans are conscious. They're aware of the world around them. And non-humans exhibit consciousness like any of those versions of humans that you mentioned.
I believe so, but I would say the variety and nature of human consciousness has probably changed more than most people appreciate. There's a very interesting book called Sand Talk by a guy named Tyson Yunkaporta, who you should interview, actually. I mean, he's an Indigenous Australian and also a faculty member at University of Melbourne, I think. But his book is a critique of modern civilized culture from the perspective of Indigenous Australian culture. And one of his lines of thinking or feeling is there were many, many other ways of perceiving the world that were natural to Indigenous people, and we've essentially lost most of them and are just obsessed with analytical, like pattern matching capability. We've lost some situatedness where you feel a oneness with the land that you're in and a oneness with your historical lineage. And we've lost some holistic pattern recognition, not pattern recognition, it's the wrong word, some holistic appreciation capability, right? And from my own perspective, I think he may overstate things a bit. On the other hand, maybe that's because I'm too deep in the narrow world of modern culture. You can never know, right? But I think the nature of consciousness will expand and will continue to shift. I do suspect that engineered minds can have consciousness in the same experiential sense that we do. And we had a lot of talks on that in the AGI conference this year, not by any planning or engineering on the part of myself or the other conference organizers, because I mean, we allow people to propose workshops. We have people submit papers and they're refereed by a community of their peers. And this year we happen to get a lot of stuff on consciousness, and I'm not sure why. It could be the Bay Area has a lot of people thinking about consciousness right now, but we did a AGI conference here twice before and didn't have that happen. I think also as AGI becomes near and palpable, people start to think more and more about these deeper questions, right? And you could see for a few years after Nick Bostrom's book, Superintelligence, everyone was like, is AGI going to kill us? Then the rhetoric sort of shifted to, is AGI going to take all our jobs? I felt like some people figured, yeah, it's probably going to kill us. I just don't want to be unemployed for the last few years of my life, right? But in seriousness, I guess they realize that's sort of a important question, but not one they can do much about. Whereas AI disrupting the workforce is something you could probably do something about in the next few years. But then now, as AGI's advent becomes palpable, people start to think more about, well, okay, we can see AGI is going to be able to think as well as people pretty soon. It's looking tangible. But will it just be pretending to understand anything. We'll just be pretending to be conscious. And you could imagine a scenario where humanity obsoletes itself in favor of smarter machines that have no experience. So like advanced consciousness has deleted himself in favor of fake consciousness, which is like, okay, at least there's still monkeys and bugs around that are actually conscious. I guess well, not everyone accepts that either, but I don't tend to sympathize with that too much. I tend to be more along a Buddhistic or Taoist sort of line, which would suggest consciousness is sort of immanent in the fabric of being. And, my fingernail has some consciousness. The phone case here has some element of consciousness. The phone has more. These have different kinds of consciousness than my brain, along some dimensions, lesser consciousness, right? Now, that doesn't solve everything. It just shifts the debate on consciousness in a way. Well, then you would ask, what would it take for a machine to have a similar kind of consciousness to a human brain? Could a post-human AGI have more intense consciousness than a human brain along some relevant dimensions? And I think we'll be able to explore this sort of question with brain-computer interfacing in different ways than we can explore it with the tools that we have now. Like if I could like wire or Wi-Fi my brain into yours, or wire or Wi-Fi my brain into a robot's RAM state or an AGI system's RAM state, like what would that feel like, right? I think we'd explore a lot of interesting dimensions of consciousness as we're able to connect brains and machines in different ways than we can right now. And I'm open to the possibility that digital computers can't manifest the same kind of consciousness as biomachines can. I just doubt it, right? I mean, could be some macro quantum dynamics in the brain lets you access the wave function of the universe in a way that gives you consciousness, and maybe a quantum computer can do that, but a digital computer can't do it. Like it could be, but I'm very unconvinced at the moment from my understanding of all the biology and physics and philosophy involved.
This is also not a rhetorical question, but there's no one, perhaps on the planet, better qualified to answer it. And that is, why pursue AGI?
Well, my mix of motivations has shifted over my lifetime. When I started, it was initially curiosity mostly. Like, I like to build bikes out of weird old bike parts. I like to brew chemicals together and see what would happen. If it had been possible to build robots in my childhood, I would have done it. I didn't have the materials on hand, right? So curious how minds work, curious what thinking is. Building stuff is one way to understand stuff, right? So I really started motivated by curiosity and by then a sort of childish ambition to build cool things. Like you look into how to build a time machine, well, maybe you could do it by like spinning a football-shaped star to get a line singularity and flying your spaceship around it. That was a hard thing to work on in practice, right? I mean, super longevity, upgrading the human brain, also very interesting. As much of a risk taker as I am, like, taking the hacksaw to my head and upgrading my brain gave me pause, right? Right. So AGI is like an amazing, epic thing to do, satisfy a lot of intellectual curiosity. Maybe you could do it just by typing commands in a computer, right? And then if so, that's a lot more approachable, right? In practice. I mean, I like theory, but I like hacking on stuff too. And even in the late 70s, you could hack on AI in a way that you couldn't hack on time machines or brain enhancement, right? And that's still the case. As I got older, I started to see more ways that AGI could save the world, to put it semi-ironically, but also sincerely, right? I mean, you start to see humans are very bad at regulating planetary scale society. I mean, I grew up walking around with my parents in anti-Vietnam War marches, right? And my grandparents were heavily involved in the nuclear disarmament movement in the late 60s. So we haven't started World War III yet. We haven't annihilated the species. We've still got stupid and pointless wars killing massive numbers of people all around the planet. Like, I've spent a lot of time in Africa. The news doesn't even report all the mass slaughters in Africa because we don't care that much if black people kill themselves, apparently. But I mean, you've got Ukraine, you've got Iran now. I mean, there's just pointless atrocities around the planet because of human beings bringing chimp level ethical judgment to advanced weaponry, right? And then getting old and dying, I never thought it was a good thing. Like, my dad, when he was a college student in Antioch College in the 60s, led a sort of theatrical protest group called SLAM, the Student League Against Mortality. So the idea that death was bad was clear to me from a very, very early age. And from books like the Prometheus Project and other science fiction books, the idea that fixing the bugs in the human molecular machine that cause us to get old and die was a feasible thing. Like, this idea was clear to me, but it also seemed clear this is hard. The human body is very complex. Could an artificial mind understand all the holistic systems, biological dynamics in the human body better than the human brain? Probably. Like, when I got to know the biology field a bit, you see each biologist understands like one gene or one pathway. Each neuroscientist understands like one region or network of the brain. Who's putting all the pieces together? Like, no one's smart enough to put all the pieces together. Society for Neuroscience has like 40,000 people in their annual conference each year, and you have like a whole floor of a building of people discussing parts of the hippocampus or the limbic system, right? You know, as I got older, I started to see all the ways a beneficial AGI can help humanity do things that are important for humanity better. So I'd say my initial curiosity and tinkerer motivations were supplemented by an AI for good motivation, right? And my mom was in the social welfare field for her whole career. She retired from being a nonprofit executive recently to become a school teacher again, which was her first occupation. But I could see there, like, how hard it is to get resources for helping people, right? For helping kids who don't have good nutrition, for helping people get educated, right? There's a lot of ways that AI can help people, right? And so I always came more from that vein than from the vein of like AI to take over or AI to help you kill people or spy on people. I mean, I worked on the spying on people part. I mean, I lived 9 years in DC and did consulting jobs for INSCOM, Army Intelligence, and various three-letter agencies. So I saw that part, and I saw that most of the people doing that are trying to save the world too, from within their own worldview. But I got burned out on that for various obvious reasons. And the more advanced AI gets, the more clear it is how much good it can do, and also how much bad it can do. Right. So then that's also a significant motivation. I mean, now people go into AI to make money, and I have made a little money from AI. I'm not complaining, but I mean that was never my main motivation, and I think not for most people in my own generation, right? Because I mean, when I got my PhD in math, the way to make money was going to quant finance. It wasn't to go into AI. Now we have people I know who've been running machine learning hedge funds and stuff. They're like, well, I'm dropping that to work on AGI because there's more money to make in AGI, right? But it's a very new phenomenon. Right?
So you and SingularityNET and a small community of researchers have been vocal that LLMs are probably not the path AGI, and we're not talking about things like neuro-symbolic reasoning.
Yeah.
Talk us through how you came to the conclusion kind of statistical modeling that LLMs are great at is maybe not.
I mean, I think
yeah.
that kind of statistical modeling is important and can be part of how you build an AGI system. I don't think it's adequate. And I think almost no one believes it's adequate. Maybe Dario and some of the guys at Anthropic do. Sam Altman is pretty public. He doesn't think it's adequate. The Google guys don't think it's adequate. The Chinese teams don't think it's adequate. So, I mean, I think the more finely posed question will be, could you get to human level AGI with an LLM-centric architecture, where you have an LLM, then you have, a symbolic reasoner, a code interpreter, a knowledge graph, a bunch of memory stores around the periphery of the LLM, maybe an agentic loop wrapped around it? Or do you need to have an architecture which has an LLM perhaps as one component, but not like the ruling component of it? Or do you need to just throw out the LLM entirely and build something different, right? So I'm sort of in the middle path here. Like, I don't think you need an LLM per se, but they're working very nicely now. So I think the cleanest path to an AGI would be to build a sort of hybrid architecture with an LLM as one component among multiple. Claude Code is neuro-symbolic, right? As became clear from their inadvertent code dump a while ago. There's a bunch of formal verification in there using, it makes sense. It's analyzing code, which is symbolic, right? But Claude Code is an unsung neural symbolic system. And, we don't know what OpenAI is doing to persist memory through a long session. But if there's a knowledge graph in there with some reasoning on it, which one suspects, that's neural symbolic also, right? So, the actual lines are not as crisply drawn as the media version would suggest. But yeah, I do think what LLMs are doing leaves out a lot of important parts of what a mind does. And we had a talk yesterday by a guy named John Laird. He's been working on cognitive architectures since time immemorial. He's even older than I am, right? And he came out of the sort of rule-based, logic-based discipline of AI with a Newell and Simon and so forth, back to like general problem solver, the first rule-based AI system to do anything interesting back in the early 70s, right? John has now put forth something called the common model of cognition. And it's common to AI systems aiming to be human-like. So already we can see like some systems I'm working on now, like Omega Hive system, which brings together multiple Omega class systems. It goes beyond what he's doing with the common model of cognition because it's less single-threaded than the human deliberative mind is, just because you have multiple agents with more possible autonomy, right? On the other hand, if you look at his common model of cognition, you can see all the things that LLMs and current LLM-centric systems leave out, right? World modeling is one aspect, which Jan LeCun and others have made a bunch of noise about. Effective metacognition, which is what Laird talked about in his talk at this conference, another key aspect that's largely left out. They sort of fake metacognition, but given that backpropagation still fails at continual learning, their metacognition barely gets started over one dialogue session, then it's wiped out when you start the other one, right? So until you can update the weight matrix coordinated with learning in the activation space, you're not going to get non-trivial metacognition out of LLMs, right? And then, episodic memory also, they're not really doing that because of the same incapacity for continual lifelong learning. So there are many key aspects of human cognition that you can see in what John Laird and colleagues have charted out, synthesizing basically the whole field of cognitive science, right? There are many obvious aspects of human cognition that LLMs just don't do. So then question is, can you get those by glomming on other tools onto the LLM? And I think current progress on that is very poor. Like, OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and the Chinese firms, they try to layer like vector memory stores for episodic memory onto an LLM, and they're bad, right? They don't work well. And we've seen this within our experiment with claw systems. Like if you take an open claw system, like an agentic loop, and you have vector memory stores through various skills along with the LLM and the loop, they can be very useful, but they totally lose the thread of what they're doing, even over a single multi-part task, let alone over weeks or months. Now, when we put a symbolic memory store from our Hyperon system into the agentic loop, it's building a knowledge graph, doing inference on that knowledge graph, and it actually remembers who and what it is, and it remembers a collection of related tasks over a long period of time, right? And that's because you're bringing in something else different than the transformer as a first-class citizen in the proto AGI architecture and in the loop comprising the cognitive cycle, right? So we're seeing there in the things that Omega Claw does better than OpenClaw, you're seeing how bringing other significant cognitive architecture components on an equally important level to the LLM is valuable for achieving long-term episodic memory and strategic planning, right? Which are pieces of human-like cognition that LLMs don't do. And you can see why it's confusing there also, because like Fable is very good at writing you a strategic plan. I mean, so is GPT-Sol, so is Kimi K3. They can write you a strategic plan, executing on, adapting a strategic plan to an uncertain reality as you go, even when you wrap them in an agentic harness like OpenClaw, it doesn't work well because they have to rely on an external memory that's just much flatter and dumber than the LLM's thought process, right? So the LLM companies are trying to overcome that. They're putting a lot of resources into overcoming that. They're not doing well. The best progress at overcoming that is very narrow and specialized, right? Like for code, you can try to overcome that better by just relying on external artifacts, right? You rely on GitHub, you generate markdown files. But even there, I mean, I was using Claude Coding Codex very heavily to do AI development, but they lose the thread all the time. They go down like wonky little rabbit holes. They'll like spend days hardening a piece of code against edge cases when you haven't demonstrated the core functionality works, right? Because they forgot what the goal is, right? They forgot where you were in addressing the goal. And then, so I tried OpenClaw to wrap up individual API calls. That worked better, but still not that well. Now having a hive of Omega Claw agents doing AI coding for me, it works much better. They lose track of the thread. So like we're starting to see in practice how getting neuro-symbolic actually helps with having AI systems carry out complex tasks better, right? But again, Claude Code is also neuro-symbolic. So really the question is, what kind of neuro-symbolic? How do the neural and symbolic relate to each other within the agentic loop, right? And it gets to be a fine-grained issue, right?
Now, you've chosen to build OpenCog and Hyperon on a blockchain. What are the benefits of decentralized AGI?
Well, the biggest overall benefit probably is going to end up to be more political and human world rather than purely technical. Because if I roll out an AGI system on 100 server farms in 20 different countries, plus 1 million people's home machines, then nobody can take control of it or lock it down or autocratically force it to do something, in the same way that no one can take over the internet and no one can stop people from using Linux, right? So, I mean, that's a very major advantage, which is the same advantage that Bitcoin or Ethereum or our ASI coin has, right? So that advantage would hold even if blockchain made things more inefficient, right? There's many other classes of advantages. So one other class of advantage is it allows emergent collective intelligence in a system where the different parts are owned by different people who don't fully trust each other, right? And the world is currently populated by many people who don't currently trust each other, right? So I mean, like now, so you have Kimi K3 open weights model. I don't know what was the code that was used to train it, right? But now, if we were doing things in a more sophisticated blockchain-based way, Moonshot behind Kimi could expose certain properties of their training system to me without me seeing everything about their code base, right? And that could be very interesting, right? They might allow me to validate that their system has certain fairness or safety properties, even without revealing all their code to me, right? And being able to share certifications that your code displays certain properties without having to open all your code. I mean, I'd rather everything was open, but if not, because that's the nature of the world today, if I want to rely on their model for critical things in my own work, I would accept a cryptographic proof that their code base obeyed certain safety properties, right? And we have the technology to do that now. It's not widely adopted. So another example of that is what I call cryptographic laterality. So if you have an AI system that lives across many different nodes, and different nodes are good at different things, let's say each node is good at efficiently controlling inference in a different topic area or something, then you could have two nodes cooperate and do cryptographic secret sharing in the context of that cooperation so they can collaborate together on the things they know about, but then they're not opening up what they do to everyone. So you just have opening up temporarily on a local basis between pairs or small groups of nodes. The advantage you get from that is you could have a decentralized network, which is hard to fork, right? Because to fork it, you'd have to fork almost the whole thing rather than just a little piece of it. Just forking a little piece of it, you're only forking a piece of the knowledge. And you can't just download all the knowledge. You can just use the knowledge when you're in a cryptographic secret sharing relationship with that node. So there's a broad variety of options to mix trust and mistrust in a decentralized network. It's been too inefficient to do this stuff in practice till now. So we have in DevNet stage, about to move up to testnet, then mainnet rollout probably early next year, a blockchain framework called ASI chain. We're actually using the AI language of thought of our Hyperon AGI system, which is Meta, METTA. We're using that as the smart contract language of the blockchain, right? And this should allow us to do a bunch of this fancy stuff at large scale, which has never been possible before. I mean, getting adoption will be another thing, but at least we have our own AGI project that will use it, and it's out there open for others to use if they like, right? And so that bunch of advantages there, none of which really require cryptocurrency, right? I mean, they require blockchain. On the other hand, the cryptocurrency aspect is also relevant. I mean, so if you want to have a decentralized network with all these different nodes doing different things all around, right? I mean, then a very convenient way to keep this network running in a safe way, like have each node stake some tokens, and then if they're a bad actor, then you can cancel those tokens, right? Now, that doesn't work well with real money for legal reasons, right? Like if they're staking USD, like you can't just delete that USD unless you're U.S. government, right? Whereas if we don't have a CBDC for U.S. dollars. If it's a cryptocurrency, you can have nodes in the network stake the token, and you can kill the stake if they're bad actors, and that is standard proof of stake in decentralized networks. It doesn't waste energy in the way that Bitcoin style proof of work does. So there are reasons to have cryptocurrency in there. That said, there are forms of proof of reputation that don't need staking or don't need a cryptocurrency either. So I think cryptocurrency does have a value, but I wouldn't lead with it. Like its value in certain methods for enforcing good behavior in the decentralized network, and the value of the decentralized AI network is more fundamental than the money aspect. And I think people don't see the value that blockchain has for AI because they're distracted by cryptocurrency as sort of the leading use case for blockchain right now.
What's the end state for SingularityNET? At what
The
point
singularity.
will you feel, well, maybe unpack that. I think of that as kind of the convergence of carbon and silicon-based life forms. Is that like what? When will you feel like your job has been accomplished?
I mean, SingularityNet as a project is aimed at building the decentralized infrastructure for the singularity, right? And the ASI chain, I think, will be sort of the technical culmination of that. Like we have a decentralized platform now. It works, and we're using it for a bunch of our AI systems. There are users out there, but it doesn't let you do all this fancy crypto stuff at scale, because with the current version of SingularityNet platform, you can't actually put the AI on chain at scale. You can sort of run the AI in a container, and you have a sort of sidecar proxy container that then does all the decentralized network. So it does let you run a decentralized AI network with no central owner or controller, which is a quite valuable thing, right? But it doesn't let you actually put the AI on chain, and the ASI chain will let you put the AI on chain, right? Which is a huge step. So basically, rolling out that platform is the founding purpose of SingularityNet, and we will have crypto token used for staking and for ensuring good behavior of node operators within that network. But we've also been the main contributors to the Hyperon AGI project, which is a separate open source project. And I mean, I'm now working with some partners on a separate company called BGI Labs that's aimed at building commercial applications leveraging Hyperon, then using Singularity as the deployment fabric, right? But I mean, the goal of this is to build beneficial, decentralized general intelligence. I mean, when I say that's the getting to the beneficial AGI is the end goal of SingularityNet, because once you have that beneficial AGI, it will rapidly rewrite all that code in a much better way than what we've done, right? And whether the formal nonprofit foundation of SingularityNet Foundation still exists and operates a token after you've got to the singularity, I don't know. Quite possibly it does. Maybe that will be the token of the post-AI supermind economy, as it expands through the galaxy. But if not, if the supermind thinks of a better way to do things, that's probably also okay. And all the token holders will get a big payday during the last year before money is obsoleted by the supermind. They can have a great party on the way out, right?
Ben, I've got to get you off the hot seat because I got to get you back to your own conference. Mm-hmm. But you're not going anywhere without answering one last important question. What do you want to define your legacy?
I'm not worried about my legacy. I'm more worried about enjoying life and having the feeling of doing important and interesting things. I mean, I think, honestly, I've got 5 kids and one granddaughter. I'm probably more invested in that very prosaic aspect of legacy, because I've always put all my ideas out there in books and open source code, and people take credit for it, do what they will with it, and it's cool. It's cool to see your ideas pervade out there, right? Like with AGI, I mean, we published a book with the title Artificial General Intelligence in 2005. I didn't know anyone would use that term before. I found some guy named Mark Gubert had used that term in an article on nanotech in 1997. I'm sure someone in Russia used it before that, and we just haven't found out about it yet, right? But I mean, you can put an idea like that out there. You can put concrete code for neuro-symbolic AI out there. I mean, people will use it. People will do it. Some of them will know you came up with it and not cite you on purpose. Some of them came up with it on their own, either independently or because they absorbed it through the zeitgeist. Right. I mean, that's all right. I will be surprised if super AI superminds give a shit about which humans thought about which thing. Like, do we care which caveman invented the adjective? Right? I mean, some guy used the adjective first, right? The fact that Thor rather than Ugg invented the adjective back then, in a way, that's Thor's legacy. But I mean, whatever. So it's amazing to be contributing what seems like a non-trivial piece to what's evolving now. Though, like if you see what's going on in the AGI-26 conference, where we're sitting now doing this podcast, I mean, most of the people in the room that were probably a few years away from making human level AGI, like people can feel that in the last few months, the rate of progress accelerated in January, February when coding agents finally became useful. The rate of progress accelerated again a few months ago when claw agents became useful for orchestrating AI work, right? We just got the scalable version of our meta atom space. It lets us do symbolic and evolutionary AI at large scale. We just got that working at scale last fall for the first time. And, now we're actually using it to do practical stuff, and it's helping us to do our own coding faster. And we've got, so many random people, like one 18-year-old kid, one 15-year-old kid, like all these random people popping up, downloading our code, forking it, making it better, and making pull requests, right? And all this like week by week, month by month. So you can feel there's like a concrete singularity is near vibe. Like you can feel the acceleration, and it is super cool to be a part of that. And I feel a little residual guilt that there are brilliant people all around the world who don't get to be a part of it just because of the circumstance they were born into, right? But it's very cool to be able to just be in the mix and near the hub of such amazing stuff emerging.
Whether or not it's intentional, you're doing a service to all of humanity just by talking openly, publicly about beneficial AI and AGI. So
we're
thank you.
Certainly serious about that piece. I mean, I don't think anyone in the AI space is out to annihilate the world or do anything bad, but I think there's a lot of self-deception in the commercial AI space now, where people want to convince themselves they're doing this for the good of the world, when maybe they're sucked into processes they're not thinking about fully, right? So I do think like none of us should fully trust ourselves with something this big. Like we've got to open it up, and trusting the collective is scary, but it should be scarier than trusting ourselves and our best friends, right?
This has been brilliant. I got to get you back to the conference, but I hope you'll take me up on the offer. We must continue the conversation. It's the most important one for all of humanity, and thank you for doing everything that you're doing.
Yeah, well, thanks for what you're doing too. I mean, putting these ideas out there and nudging folks like me to explain things in ways that a few more people can understand. I mean, this is also an important thing to do.
Well, gosh, that's all the time we have for this conversation on AI and the future of work. Thanks to the great Dr. Ben Goertzel for hanging out with us today. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from People Rain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.
Yo, it's the end of the show, time to power it down. AI's the sis, but humans wear the crown. Team Human in the house, got the vibe so clever. Dan Turchin from People Rain, making us better. We learned about AI for humans. We're ready to conquer the future, that's all for now. See you next time.